All right, so this is the first test now. I just want to see how close we can get them. So this is the Klon at low gain versus the Klonduit. Here's the Klonduit. I'm going to show you how to build this really cool pedal today, the Klonduit. It requires no power, and my original goal was to be able to create a modular Klon out of gear that you probably already own. Now, the idea behind the Klonduit was just to get you in that ballpark of a real Klon, but I never could have guessed or predicted how close we would actually get. Like seriously close. Now, I've been designing and building effects pedals since the early 2000s, and when you look at how dirt pedals are made from a circuit perspective, they're kind of made up of these little modules or sections. So before we get into building this, let's have a quick look at the schematic of a real Klon. Now, we're going to look at this in a really basic way. There's a lot going on here. We'll skip over a few things, but I just want you to get the concept. So the input buffer is kind of like a tone shield. In the Klon, it gives the signal the strength that needs to be split without losing clarity or punch. Now, without the buffer, splitting the signal can suck the life out of your tone, along with causing lots of noise problems. Okay, so next is the engine or the drive stage. Now, this is the heart of the Klon. It boosts your signal way up, and it's also where all that overdrive is generated. So next is the mixing stage. It comes from these 2 points here and joins back around here. Now, this, in my opinion, is where the Klon's mojo really kicks in. It blends your clean signal back in with the driven one, and this mix gives the Klon a lot of its signature sound. Then we have a tone stage. It's a smooth, simple filter that gently shapes the top end. Finally, we have a second buffer. This just makes sure your signal leaves really strong out of the pedal. So I had this crazy idea of building a modular Klon using things that I already own, because in its most basic form, all we really need is an input stage or a buffer. So for that, I'm going to be using a Polytune, but you can use a Boss pedal, a Digitech, anything with a buffered bypass. Then we need an engine or the drive stage. Now, you could use any distortion or overdrive pedal. I'm going to use my workshop tube screamer today. It's just a stock tube screamer that I built into this random enclosure that I've got. Next is the mixing and tone stage. Now, this is where the Klonduit comes in. It ties these elements together along with providing a way to naturally blend back in your pure guitar tone in a way that sounds properly blended and glued together, not just stacked. So if this part's not done right, the two signals can sound separate and individual, kind of like when you're running it through a mixing desk. Now, we don't want that. We want them to be blended together, kind of glued as one sound. So as far as practical application goes, you might have your pedal board here. Now, you've probably already got a tuner or something at the front end anyway that your guitar signal hits first. So you'll be going through that first stage anyway, or you might have some other buffered bypass pedals that are going to be in front of the Klonduit, which is going to give you that first stage. Then all you need is the Klonduit and some other drive pedal, and this just gets hooked in to that pedal's send and return jacks. And then everything else just goes through like normal. You might have some other pedals after it, as you normally would. So it's a very practical and easy way to add something like this to your board using things you already have. This could be a Rat, a tube screamer, it could be any sort of drive pedal, and it will give you that sort of Klon vibe. Right, so what parts do we need? Well, first you need an enclosure. I'm using a 1590B style enclosure. Then you're gonna need a foot switch, a 3-pole double throw if you wanna add in that foot switch LED. Then you're gonna need a capacitor. This is the smudging capacitor, it's quite important. We'll get into that soon. A 100K audio taper pot, an LED, and you're gonna need 4 jacks. So that is pretty much it. Obviously wire, solder, the usual sort of stuff that we need to make these sort of things, you know, drills and all that. Okay, cool, so let's get into it. As far as drilling this enclosure, this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have 2 top mounted jacks. These are gonna be my send and return. My input jack is gonna be on this side and my output's gonna be on this side. And I'm gonna have my foot switch 20mm up centered from the bottom, and then I'm gonna mount my pot 20mm down centered as well. And I'll put a little LED just to the side here, kind of to make it look sort of clonish. But that's basically how I'm gonna drill this out. I'm gonna get this drilled out now. I'm gonna put all the parts in, and then we'll just have a run through the circuit to show you how it all sort of is wired and connected up. Here it is all wired up. Now, the true bypass switching, you can just use whatever you'd normally use. And also remember, the power here is just for this LED, so you don't actually need any power going to this unit. It can be completely passive if you just want it to be that way. Now, the specific way I've done my switching here is available on my website. There's links down in the description. You can check that out. It's free download in the free section. And if you want the schematic for this pedal, I also have that on our website too. Now, if you do want to purchase that, it just supports the channel, so thanks heaps for doing that, but you don't actually need the schematic. You can just follow along here, and I'll also get some extra shots in a sec with my phone, just so you can see how it all fits together. But essentially what's happening is that we are coming in here in the input jack side, going to the switch, and then out from the switch we've got 2 wires, both with 1K resistors in series. That's how we're going to split the signal. We're going to use those 1K resistors, and that's going to separate those 2 signals, so you don't really get any crosstalk or anything like that. Now, one of those goes down and around here to the send jack. Now this sends out from here to whatever dirt pedal that you've got, and then that comes back into the return jack, down into one side of this blend pot. Now from that same point, the other wire with the 1K resistor in series goes across and into the grounded side of this blend pot. So I just realized while I was editing this that I'm talking about the grounded side of the pot and the input side of the pot, that sort of thing. That's just a way that I like to think about it, like a standardized way I think about it, so everything sort of makes sense to me. So I just want to explain that really quickly. I'm thinking as if this has been wired up as a volume pot. So the grounded side of the pot is this left lug when looking from the back. I think it's lug number 1. And the input side of the pot is this lug on this side, and the wiper I think of as the output, even though that is not actually how it is. It's just a way I think about it, so I just talk about it like that sometimes. So the grounded side of the pot, or the side I call the grounded side, this is where your clean unaffected signal comes in. It adjoins to this side of the pot here. This side is your return jack from your distortion pedal, whatever that is, tube screamer, rat, something like that. And the center lug, the wiper, that goes out back to the switch. That's from the effect. Oh, that's what you got to remember. This lug here, the far left one, this is where your clean sound goes into, this is where your dirty sound goes into, and this is the mixed output coming from there. Just wanted to clarify that because I thought it was a little confusing sounding during editing. And then it goes out from the blend pot back into the switch. So the usual way you'd sort of wire a switch. I don't really want to go through the switch wiring because there's so many ways you can do it, and it's pretty stock standard stuff. And then you've got your output jack here. So you're going in to the switch, it's getting split there. One side goes to the pot, the clean side goes to the grounded side of the pot. The other side goes to the send jack, back out through your distortion pedal, back into the return jack, and that goes into the normal input side of the pot. And then the wiper from the pot goes out back to the switch. Now the big important thing here is this capacitor. This is joined between the 2 outer lugs on this pot. If you don't have this capacitor in here, what actually happens is it sounds like those 2 signals are stacked on top of each other, and what it can do is it can sound a little sharp when blended, a little bit metallic. So what the smudging capacitor does is it gently shifts how the high frequencies interact. It's not cancelling anything, it's just smudging the edge of the tone to make it feel more naturally blended. And it's probably the most important part in there. Now you can use any value from 250 picofarad. I probably wouldn't go any higher than 4.7 nanofarad. I mean, you can if you want to. Now the value I've got in there is something that I did a lot of experimenting to find what was going to sound closest to that Klon. So I used a real Klon, and I kept changing out capacitors till I found one that worked. Now I'm going to save that value for people that do purchase that schematic as a bit of a thank you. Honestly, just get in there with alligator clips and have a play around to see what you like best. Okay, so that's basically how it's all wired up. Now let's go and test this out against a real Klon to see how it stacks up. Okay, I really wanted to show you my testing setup here. So I've got this true bypass switcher that I built. So it's got a bypass function, so I can just completely bypass everything. Then I've got 2 separate loops, and one of the loops is going to be for the Klon here, and the other loop is going to have the Klonduit setup in it. We're going to be coming out of here into the Klon, back into here, and that's completely separate from this setup, which is kind of trying to mimic what would already be on your pedal board. You've probably already got a tuner or some sort of buffered bypass pedal in front of this anyway, so your guitar signal is going to be coming out into here, into the Klonduit, back out into here, and in the loop of the Klonduit I've got this tube screamer. Now this is my workshop tube screamer, just ignore the enclosure completely, but I just have it in the workshop in case I need a tube screamer. It's just a stock tube screamer, so I just wanted to show you that you could get really good sounds without anything sort of flash. You don't need flash gear, you just need some sort of dirt pedal. I'll put a rat in there later and show you what that sounds like as well. but I thought the tube screamer would give us maybe the closest to a Klon sound that we can get. Anyway, so that is the setup. So I'll just be using this box just to simply switch between the two setups completely independently, so there's no sort of muddying of the signal. So when we're on the Klon, it's just the Klon, nothing else will be in the chain. And when I click it across, it'll just be the Klonduit setup, just like it would be on your pedal board. So that is the setup we're using today. Right, so this is the bit I've been looking forward to the most, to see how close I can get the Klonduit to sound to an actual Klon. Plus members, I've got a copy of the Klonduit schematic over on our website for you for free. If you want to purchase that schematic too, it's over there as well, and I will be batch building some of these Klonduit pedals. Links down in the description if you want to check that out. It all just goes back into supporting this channel, so thanks so much if you do grab one of those. Right, so I've set the Klon up in its most popular format, which is a low gain booster. The gain set low. I've got the tone in around about the middle and the volume just bumped up a bit to push the front end of an amp into like clipping. So here's my dry tone. So that's our bass tone there. Okay, so here's the Klon. Here's the Klonduit. Right, so let's just do some quick A-Bing between them. So here is the Klon. In the room at the moment, it sounds remarkably similar, so I'm going to be really interested to see what it sounds like in playback, but that is just so close. And remember, I'm just using the Klonduit and a stock tube screamer, nothing special. Man, that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's try a bit more of a pushed sound now. Right, so I've got the Klon set to about half gain, tone still at noon, and I've got the volume just bumped up a bit. So this is a bit more of the Klon's actual internal distortion we're hearing, so not so much pushing the amp into clipping. And I have turned up the dial on the Klonduit, so we're getting less of that clean blend and a bit more of the actual tube screamer mix. Okay, so this is the Klon. Yeah, once again, it sounds remarkably similar here in the room. It is so close. I mean, it's not exactly the same though, and that's one thing I want to say. I wanted it to get in that ballpark of the Klon, and I feel like we're way closer than just in the ballpark. That's probably the point. I think I just got it even a little bit closer. That's crazy. That is crazy close. Okay, so I'm going to crank up that gain now and just see how close I can match it at a higher gain setting. So I've got the gain cranked up on the Klon now, and I've dialed back the tone a bit. Done the same on that tube screamer, and I've mixed it so we've got even more of the tube screamer part of the mix. There's always some of that clean blending back in though. Here is the Klon to start. You know, I have to say I'm not a massive fan of the Klon sound at higher gain. It's quite a sort of a fizzy sound to me. I definitely like it at that lower to mid gain level, but it goes to show you can get really freaking close. I mean, and normally I wouldn't worry about trying to tone match. You just plug it in and get a sound that you like and you go with it. And the cool thing about having it modular like this is you've got a lot more control over the sound because you've got individual pieces. So you can really fine tune and tweak it. You're not just stuck with whatever mix. So you can have more of that higher gain sound with a lot of that clean blend mixed in. So it's actually pretty incredible how much more scope you've got in a modular sort of way. So what I want to do now is I am going to just sort of show you how it all works in a real practical sort of way. I might chuck a rat in there this time just for something completely different and just show you how you're going to actually use this on your pedal board. Let's just go through quickly how easy it is to actually set this up. Right, so here's my super basic setup right here. At the moment, I've taken the Klon out now, so the Klon's just sitting there. Before I had it hooked in with that true bypass switcher. So here I'm using a rat. You're just going straight into the side of the Klonduit here, so that's your input. That'll be coming from a tuner or some sort of buffered bypass pedal that's already on your board anyway, and that's the output that goes to your amp or to the next pedal. And then you've got your send jack, which goes into the input, and then from the output of the rat, it goes into the return jack. And this is your blend. You've got clean all the way on this side, all the way around to the distortion amount that you've got set here. So it's just blending your unaffected pure clean sound with this distortion, and that's simply it, because the Klon does that anyway. Now I want to show you what we can get with this rat real quick, just how easy it is to get some really cool sounds. Let's jam through this really quick. I'm just using the mics I have in the room for this one. So I've got the rat set up on a low gain sound, and I just want to show you the range. So this is full clean, right? Almost sounds totally clean. You can hear still a little bit of that dirt coming through. As we bring this around, it blends more of this rat in. Until you get full blend. You can find some really nice settings just by keeping your pedal set up however you'd set it up and just adjusting the Klonduit. And then you can just turn it off, so it's just in bypass mode essentially. Super easy. I'm really liking this low gain sound. I definitely prefer the lower gain sounds. Yeah, that's a pretty cool, inspiring sort of tone. Really, really nice sound there. I was kind of getting a bit lost in that one. So what do you guys actually think? Do you think this setup, the modular Klon idea, is actually as legit as a Klon, a real Klon? I think it's pretty freaking close. I mean, I'm quite actually amazed how close it is, even with different types of drives in there. So if you give this a try, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this circuit. I think it's actually pretty amazing. I'm really glad I did this. I thought it was this crazy, ridiculous idea. So if you haven't already, please subscribe and we'll catch you in the next video. bassy sort of blues jam there.